Were you using your own capital, or did you raise capital to put into this? Because we all know tech burns money, right?
You can dream big, but you also have to start somewhere where it's something that's tangible and small. That's unusual. So I don't want to provide that as any advice because it was scary. It's always scary, but that's super scary. Nobody knew this was a new concept. You'd be surprised, you have these gigantic companies, but you get in with the right person there and they really do foster you. They like helping smaller companies through.
Welcome to another episode of the Dan Lok Show. Today I am super excited because I'm bringing on someone special. Someone I believe is in the same mission, that has the same mission as me in the education space. It's about educating other people and helping them to better their lives. So I'm super excited. Dr. Ginger, welcome to the Dan Lok Show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and I'm fascinated. So first of all, how did you even get into the whole digital certification badging industry?
Yeah, so it's a good starting point. So my background, I was a professor of education before starting my company Badgecert. So in my iterations and in my research as an academic, I was really looking at how do we help engage and motivate students to move through their journey of education. And at that point, I was teaching pre-service and practicing educators, so people who were in the classrooms, and wanted to provide a good model for them as well to recognize all the kinds of things that their students were also doing in their classrooms. And I find that just in general in education, the only medium we really have today to really represent what somebody's done is a transcript. Finish your course, you have a transcript at the end, and then that's it. But there's so many other things, as you know, that go into what great education looks like, and really helping somebody to explicitly show the pathway that they've gone towards mastery. So I got involved in the digital badges as an academic and looking at that as a medium for recognition of all the kinds of competencies and skills that my students were developing in my classroom outside of just getting their A or their B at the end of the course. And in that research and in that exploration, I said, wait a second, there's actually a business here. So it started out with looking at it. Mozilla Open Badges framework was really the foundation of that. And they provided a standard for recognition through digital badges. And we can get into that a little bit later. But I took that concept and said, hey, let's really kind of build this. So we decided to take those principles and build a platform from scratch. And here we are, many years later, recognizing students for all sorts of different types of experiences and education and certifications.
And how many stakeholders now within this ecosystem now?
Yeah, so in our, just in the broader ecosystem, there's millions and millions and millions. I bet the end user count probably is in the hundreds of millions at this point of people, end users who've received digital credentials for something. Our company has approximately 4 million end users at this point, people who've received our badges. We have thousands of organizations that are utilizing our services. And it is something that has reached that proverbial tipping point. So we found at the beginning when we were starting our company that we had to really train people and help them understand what digital badges were. And at this point, it's sort of just like, okay, we love digital badges, what's next? So we're really talking with a lot of our organizations about best practices, which I know, on many of your episodes, you also discuss. But what are those next types of steps that all sorts of organizations can go through to really help to promote the kinds of experiences and the kinds of excellence that is necessary for success in the professional space.
And for those who are not familiar with digital badges, explain to us a little bit about why is that important? Is it just for school? Who does this help?
Yeah, it's a great question. So digital badges, I'll tell you a little bit about what they are and then sort of how where they sit in the educational space. So basically what they are two parts. So one is the icon itself. So it could be really anything you can think of that really represents the kinds of experience that individual went through in order to earn a credential. So many of our customers end up using their own custom artwork because they want it to be represented of their, look like their brand exactly. But the part that really makes badges really interesting is that they are embedded with what we call metadata.
Okay.
So metadata is really a tool. Once you click on a badge, it opens up this window that helps a viewer better understand the nature of that earned credential. And all that information gets populated on demand. So if somebody, as an organization, issues a badge to an individual, their name gets populated there, other information, detailed description of their met competencies. It can have expiration information in there that you and I were discussing in terms of how it can be applicable to certification, but can also have other things in there like links or PDFs or JPEGs. It can have a whole bunch of different information in there, as well as tags for competencies and skills. So we find that as people put these on their different medium, like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, resumes, email signatures, etc., they're really able to promote themselves with something that's authentic and verified.
And are you saying that sometimes, because they're students, maybe they have gone through this program, and maybe there's certain programs that requires renewals every couple of years or something like that. Is the credential up to date? Or, because if we don't have that, then anyone can just copy and paste the graphic.
That's right.
Right? Does that mean they actually have gone through the program? No, unfortunately, there are people who do that, right? They have not gone through the program.
I've made a business of those people. Yes, I've actually, it's exactly true. So people, we don't want to cater to the naughty people, as I say, but oftentimes that, there's a lot of organizations we work with that really need to mitigate the risk of somebody saying that they're certified and they're not. One, it's tied to revenue a lot of the time. And two, it's a compliance issue. So just like what you were saying before, is that expiration and that the fact that it is authentic is really, really vital. So that's where our company sits, is in between the association or the organization and the individual. And we provide that bridge and the authentication between what the association or the organization says that this person did and what the person actually did. So we are sort of that in-between area, and we validate or verify it every time somebody clicks on that badge. So with 100% certainty that somebody did indeed accomplish that task or that milestone.
And as an entrepreneur in the beginning, when you were growing Badgecert, what were some of the challenges? Because you were educating the consumers, the people, the organizations. You need this. What is this? Why do I need it? How does it work? Like, what were some of the challenges?
Oh yeah, there are plenty. So you have a lot of iterations as you're starting any kind of business. So certainly, just building the platform itself. So as a tech entrepreneur, you have to really dig in deep and say, okay, what are the avenues that somebody needs to go through? And for our business, we're a B2C business, we're a B2B business. So we're really, our end customers are organizations, but we also have to deal with the B2C.
Yes,
right? Yes. So that also became a challenge, is how can we provide something for consumers to be able to utilize their badges, and the fewer calls we get, the better. We want to be in the customer service space where nobody's calling, because that's a good thing. Yes. So we wanted to make sure that end user experience is really high quality, so that we can then again gain more momentum with the organizations which were our revenue stream. So that became one of those challenges, is as we were developing the actual technology, we didn't want to rely too heavily on the B2C part, because that wasn't a revenue driver, but it really became something that was very, very important because of the nature of how our technology would work. So that was one of the large types of challenges that we had early on. And just the other part of that is that, again, nobody knew this was a new concept. So while everybody knows about paper certificates or the plaques that hang on the wall, as work got to be something that we weren't necessarily, especially now, doing in an office, so to speak. People didn't have the landscape and the places to hang.
You can't exactly, this is my certificate, trust me, it's real.
Right. Exactly, you can't do that. And everybody began to live online. So, as social media picked up and LinkedIn became the key perspective that people wanted to present to, the broader professional world, they needed a way to validate and showcase all the things that they were doing to professionalize themselves. So in that kind of responsibility, it was, okay, how does a little company start to talk with LinkedIn, and how do we get some of these other conversations started so that those other influencers would really help build our business? So it was those kind of contacts, and really digging in deep and trying to figure out who and how to provide the best advice that we could get, in terms of building this type of a business.
In the beginning, did you, in terms of B2B, who's your ideal kind of target customer?
Originally, it started out with it being associations. And so those are those types of organizations that provide certification, certificates, sometimes licensure and things like that.
Okay.
So those became an obvious, real tangible way to make the case for digital badges, because it was a 1-to-1 ratio. So you earned a credential,
And
you
then
got your digital badge.
Yes.
It made a lot of sense to a lot of people. We can make the case the fact that it was the labor was reduced for the associations. The obviously the paper trail was reduced significantly. The other aspect of it is that we started working with a lot of healthcare companies early on. And so they needed something that it's a high stakes kind of credential. So they needed a way to revoke a badge as well, so that they can mitigate the risk of somebody saying that they're credentialed if there's misconduct or something else that had happened.
Correct.
So those types of technologies lended itself perfectly to those types of needs lended themselves perfectly to that type of technology. The capability of having a workflow for expiration. So those kinds of things you couldn't have with a paper certificate. And as I mentioned, those types of experiences, the expiration, the renewals, things like that, are really where associations are generating their revenue. So badges became a real interesting way for them to be able to do all the things that they couldn't necessarily do before they were able to issue these types of credentials.
Got it. And in terms of pricing, when you go after those types of market, were you thinking about what was that like? Was it a contract type setup, or was it you have to do a lot of custom work, help them design the badges? What was that experience like?
It's a great question. So early on, we had a graphic designer on staff because I thought, everybody's going to want to create their own badges and what have you. We also have on our platform an authoring tool. So you can, there's a tool on there to be able to create badges. But what we found early on is that most of our clients, especially the larger ones, already had full creative on staff. So they didn't need our guy in the back who was doing, graphic design. So we, quickly realized, that they can give us the artwork, or they can upload it themselves to the platform. So that was,
again, to the platform.
Exactly right. So there were just those kinds of things that we, didn't know early on, what was going to stick or not. So that became one of the kinds of things that early on was important, and we wanted it to become as self-service as possible. So again, we wanted to provide an experience for our administrators that they can go and it's point and shoot, and they didn't have to, the technology itself wasn't very laborious. Many of our administrators on the organization side are not necessarily technically savvy. So they needed a way to be able to do this, feel comfortable doing it, and again, not feel stressed out, overly stressed out about the experience, because they were moving from paper to digital, and they had to really provide that marketing opportunities for their own stakeholders, so that the people who were earning the badges didn't freak out when they got a digital badge instead of the paper certificate in the mail. There was a lot of that given back. Yeah.
Almost reminds me of like early on the business model, like when you go to a website, maybe e-commerce website, they have these trusted seals.
That's right.
Right? It's kind of like that. How can I trust this website? Right. Do they have actual customers? They click on it. Oh, yeah, actually they have some reviews. This reminds me like kind of like a model of that, right?
Yeah.
But in education.
Absolutely. And, early on, we had a lot of people wanting to white label our product. And then we got to understand that, this isn't the type of thing you want to white label. You want a third-party authentication tool. Yeah. So we kind of did away with that early on as well, just for the exact reason you're talking about, is that they wanted that third-party authentication of the credential, and we could provide that on demand.
Yeah. And now, since like say COVID-19, do you see in terms of the business, I guess the business should be booming, because I guess more people will be going online on education. One of the things I talked about in my work that I believe we're shifting from the job economy to what I call the skill economy, right? So the education system needs to be updated, right? Now students want to explore other options to learn just outside of the traditional school system, right?
For sure.
Right?
I have to say, just as an educator myself, I've been talking about the flipped classroom forever. And you talked about just being an inherent teacher.
Yes.
To me, this is, as terrible as a lot of the things are, I think that we're learning a lot about what online education can be with trial and error, and just the mass amount of people who are getting into the space who are not necessarily trained educators, but they're put in that situation. And exactly what you were talking about, I think, is what's so fascinating about education today, is this opportunity for individuals to say, okay, I'm underemployed, or I've lost my position, or I want to do something else different. And they have a little bit more time to search and find new ways of educating themselves and professionalizing themselves. And it just, the amount of really high quality types of experiences that are offered right now are just tremendous. And I find that idea of that flipped classroom, either in the university level or even in the more K-12 level, it gives teachers another opportunity to say, okay, what can I do that's new? And in that case, if they're doing their lectures, let's say they're recording their lectures as we go back to schools, they're recording their lectures, they're putting those online for students to kind of watch. And then in the classrooms, they're doing more one-on-one work or more the kinds of things that they need to do to have that actual personal interaction. To me, that's the most fascinating thing about where I see education going, is that kind of flipping of how it is that we do things, because all teachers are going to now be very comfortable recording things and going online and presenting themselves. And it's just out of default. So I think it's going to vastly change the way that we educate, children as well as adults.
And wouldn't you agree it's also more cost effective and time saving as well, right? Not everyone wants to, maybe I don't want to go back to school for 4 years. Couldn't I just learn this in 4 weeks or 4 months or however time that I have, right? Like we don't need to have to do that, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that, the university system is going to have to change. I don't see it being able to stay the same. And I don't know that there's as much, I think after we come out of this, the value may not even be there as much anymore. Are we going to value different types of skills and competencies that aren't necessarily, done at a 4-year university? Or what are the other kinds of things that we really value as a society to help somebody to be successful in the work world? And those are the kinds of things. I know that you have a lot of classes also that kind of train for those things. You don't learn those things necessarily in business school. You learn them, afterwards, or you learn them because you're in a position where you have to learn them. So I find that's where it's going.
I think it also makes education way more accessible, because it's not just, I have to get into a massive student debt in order to get that piece of paper. I may or may not use it, but instead of, hey, I just want to learn this particular skill. Maybe it's as simple as I want to learn how to play piano. Guess what? I could go on a membership site and learn how to play piano. I want to learn how to mix something, how to do something, and I could do that as well at a fraction.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Of the cost, right?
Absolutely. And I find, now that I'm in this association space that you had mentioned, if you would have, if you told me I wasn't going to be teaching anymore, I would have laughed at you. You never know what's going to happen in a life, But in my position now, working with a variety of different certification and associations, it's incredible how many of them have a difficult time finding professionals who are certified in their areas that they can go to work. And some of these industries are desperate for people, and they pay extremely well. So to me, that's the next kind of use case or things that we need to start looking at is, okay, we have all these positions that need to be filled, and lots of organizations that can provide the training both online and in person. And how do we marry those two things? So to me, that's, part of my business is that's one of the things that we're looking at is how do we now know that there's all these gaps in the education world, and there's nuances that we can really provide opportunities to fill in. But to me, that's the next big thing in education is how do we find what those gaps are, and then how do we fill them in an accessible way that cost effective, time effective, all those kinds of things that people need in order to make the career leaps that are necessary today.
And I think in some cases, it forces universities or colleges to, I want to say, kind of hold them more accountable of we need to teach it, because it needs to be more student-centric. Because I remember back in the days when I was in college, it doesn't matter what I want to learn, it's the professor saying, okay, you learn this, you do the textbook. And sometimes they're interesting, sometimes they're not so interesting. We don't really have a choice as a student. We just sit there and we kind of just listen, right? But now it's more student-centric. It needs to be interesting, it needs to be engaging, it needs to be entertaining. I think it makes anyone in education space, any educators, better educators. They have to be.
They're better communicators.
Yes.
And I think that, as an educator myself, I think that's what's missing in a lot of classes that people don't find as engaging as others. Is the fact that the individual, just like what you were saying in our beginning of our conversation, you have to have that natural ability to communicate and break a concept down into to pieces that people can consume. And I think that that's a gifted educator, somebody who can not only knows the material really well, but is able to really communicate it in a way to either novices or create an opportunity for people who are experts in their field to even level it up. So how can you do that as an educator? And to me, that's when somebody's excellent at their craft, that's what they're good at.
What do you think is going to happen to universities and colleges, like from your perspective, like in next 5 years?
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting is that we have that higher echelon. So we have those Ivy Leagues. They're not going anywhere. I mean, that's still
Harvard,
you can get your degree Harvard on a piece of toilet paper and you're good to go. Those aren't going anywhere.
Yes.
But we have all that whole other section of universities that really struggle for either students or for funding and things like that. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I see, early on, online universities started to pop up. You had your Phoenix, you had your Kaplan, you had a bunch of other really high quality types. I think that a lot of these universities, at least the ones that we work with, are really trying to find, okay, what's next? And so I see them trying to manipulate the kinds of things that they're doing in person and in these kind of very expensive, campuses and things like that. I see a lot of them going hybrid or more online or looking towards those types of experiences so that they can draw more students because it'll be a lot less money, it'll be more convenient, all those other things that people now have become very accustomed to in 6 months. I think that students are going to want new things and they're going to demand new things.
Yes.
So I see that universities are really going to have to either, provide those experiences or they're not going to be able to maintain their status.
Yes, and I agree. And I think a lot of students, they might want the convenience of learning online, learning remotely, but then maybe from time to time, not just taking the exams, but there's that campus experience. But maybe the campus doesn't need to be as huge, right? It doesn't. They don't need to spend as much money, which is good. It lowers the education cost
for sure.
For the students. The whole thing, I think, would be very good for students at the end. Students will be the winners. The universities would struggle through this period of time, for sure.
Yeah, but I also see that universities, at least the ones that we're working with, are also looking for new revenue streams. So not just those four-year, university types of students, but they're also making partnerships with corporations and other kinds of things to provide what we call micro-credentials. So opportunities for professionals who already have college degrees and they're already in the workspace, what can they do to get a certificate or an endorsement or other kinds of things that a university as an authority in education can provide to them? So that's one of the things that we're seeing pop up pretty readily right now is these types of smaller divisions or departments within universities that are looking only towards those opportunities. Because again, that's a huge revenue driver to be able to partner with a corporation and provide even a class for 20 people, 30 people, whatever it may be.
And we have so many listeners that are entrepreneurs. I'm sure they have a lot of entrepreneurial questions. And I know some of those questions. So I'll ask on their behalf. So in the beginning, when you started the business, were you using your own capital or did you raise a capital to put into this? Because we all know tech burns money, right?
It does. Now, I think that we are in the almost 0 percentile. We are completely self-funded.
Yes.
So we have another company that we leveraged for the engineering support and exactly. So we leveraged that to build this product, and now it stands totally on its own and has its own revenue stream and everything like that. That's unusual. So I don't want to provide that as any advice because it was scary. It's always scary, but that's super scary. Because every dollar that went out, I was like, okay, that I could buy this or that with. So that was, it's a different way to start, but it makes you scrappy. It makes you tenacious. It provides a lot of those things that, if you had a bunch of money to rely on, you don't have to have. And as an entrepreneur myself, I don't have a business degree. I don't have that kind of background. I was an educator for a very long time. And so I had to learn a lot of that quickly. I had to learn how to market. I had to learn how to sell, it's all those types of skills. And I think that if you have to do it all and you want to put that hat on and you haven't taken in the capital to hire those kinds of people initially, I think that it really does provide the grit that you need in order for the long term, because it is not a cakewalk. Yeah.
Yes, very, very true. Did it take a long time for you to see the turn into a profit? Was it like the first years was like break even, a loss? Like when did you feel like, okay, we have a business now. Finally, it's not just a product.
Yeah, it was since our business started with educating people first on why they needed this, and then jumping in. It took about a year and a half for us to just get our first
kind of educate
clients.
their marketplace, right?
Exactly right.
Got it. Okay.
And we were first to market, which was great.
Nice.
So that helped. But it also was a little bit of it also provided some difficult parts of that, because we created a technology from scratch just based on a hunch, so we didn't have the capability of some of the other people who've come in, or other
There's no one to learn from, right? You're the pioneer, right?
Mistakes, so, exactly. So, we were kind of stuck a little bit with what we've designed.
Yes.
And we had to be nimble with that, but we didn't have the initial feedback in order to start the company. We started the company without the feedback. So I wouldn't necessarily advise that either. Now that we are established, our roadmap and our feature set is built on customer needs. So that's the best way to build a company and the best way to build technology. But we had to start somewhere. So I'd say that was, again, one of the things that we had to learn is, okay, we need to come out with a proof of concept. We need to come out with something that is useful in the space, because we needed to get our first customers. And it was sort of that weird wheel of, okay, well, we needed customers in order to fund ourselves, but we also had to present something that was useful and readily available to those clients. So it was a struggle at the beginning, but then once we started getting clients, we do a lot of word of mouth still. And we don't lose too many clients, because I think that one of the things that we've always sustained is, really excellent customer service. And, we look at ourselves almost as like a boutique kind of a company. We want to provide a high level of interaction with our clients. We want them to be successful. If they're successful, we're successful, and we get more business.
Yes. So, and I think also the business model has the whole viral effect built into it, because the B2B, if let's say in an association, a lot of members are using it, they can see it, other associations can see it. Oh, what is this? How do I do that? Maybe I should do that for my product, do that for my program. So it has that built in, right?
For sure, absolutely. And so we, early on, when we were trying to pursue like our dream clients, it was those that had certificates or end users that could potentially use the product. So we went after HR, we went after, tech, because we knew that those are the types of clients that then would be able to have the viral effect of what you were just saying, and we wanted people to put them on social media, and though we needed end users who were comfortable with doing that. So that became sort of another push when we were trying to say, okay, there's millions of clients out there. How do we start? So that's where we kind of said, okay, these are our criteria for the organizations we're going to go after.
And for someone who is, let's say, thinking of getting into tech or starting a SaaS, what advice would you have for them?
I'd say that, again, one of the best things that you could do is really look and see if there's other models out there for you. Because, again, you want to fail fast, I think is the best advice we ever got.
Very fast.
Yes.
Very fast.
Because it is very expensive when you fail slow. So I'd say that is a really one of the best pieces of advice we got is, just really look and see what else people are doing in a variety of spaces so that you can build something that is worthwhile. Getting a fantastic engineering team that also can build fast, because, if somebody asks you for a feature or something like that, if it takes a year, it loses its momentum. Technology is something that you need to get on, and you have to build quickly, and it has to be scalable. So I would say that those are the types of things that when you're getting started, you want to really look at, where do we want to go first? Because again, you can dream big, but you also have to start somewhere where it's something that's tangible and small. So it's a give and a take. You're not going to come out of the gate and make no revenue and become a LinkedIn. It's just, you can dream that, but you have to think what's realistic to get the revenue stream that you need in order to continually build and provide, really sound type of technology, and also just the type of company environment that will help you to build business.
I think one thing I've learned myself is being able to take feedback from customers versus, oh, I love these features, it's going to be great. That's what we wanted, but it may not be what the customers wanted. And like, even with me and my team, when we launch a certain features, even right now, we're upgrading one of our software. We pick up the phone, we call the customers, we set up this focus group. We say, hey, we're thinking of adding these 10 features. We think they're cool. Do you think they're cool?
For sure.
basic things like that. I think not enough people do that. Just
absolutely. And also sometimes you have to say no also.
Yes.
So you may have a company or an organization that says, we really want this. And you have to look and say, okay, is it a one-off?
Yes.
Is it just something that one company needs that I'm going to invest in, and then it's not really that viable for all the other people? And that's a hard struggle, especially if it's a prominent client that you have. So you have to balance that as well.
And I know that you, like with me and my wife, Jenny, we kind of work in the business together. I know you work with your husband as well. Share a little bit of tips on that, because some people could make that work. Some people would never make that work.
Oh, for sure.
What's been your experience?
I'd say that we both come to the table with our own experiences and our own expertise, and we don't step on each other's toes. So, and that's, it works in a marriage and it works in a business. You stay in your own lane. I think that's a very helpful thing. And just really having, a partner that you can run ideas by and dream with and innovate with. Because I think that a big part of building anything together, building a home, building a business, building anything, is that ability to communicate and really respecting and listening to the other person. So, when my husband and I work, in the same office, and, we start out from home, obviously we're home more often now. But I think it's the ability then to understand, again, where your lane is and what you're good at, and then giving the other person the leeway that they need to do the things that they're good at. Great share. One thing that
my wife actually came up with, Jenny, that she said, so because we work together, so we have kind of the working relationship and then go home. So we would have like a hard stop.
That's right.
Okay, before this is the CEO Dan, this is the husband Dan now.
Yes.
So we keep it separate. Otherwise, it's easy to, she's like, I don't like your tone. You're talking to me like the CEO, not the husband, right?
Yeah.
So I need to kind of switch.
Yeah. I'd say, yes, that's the ideal world. Yes. However, when you're starting a business,
forget that.
150,000%, you're giving to it. So it's like, it blends in, but again, it's the capability of saying, you know what, I'm off of work now. I've clocked out, so it's again, finding that balance. And I think for a lot of people who work together, I think having a hard stop is a good idea, or, having time during your day where you're having a working lunch or whatever it may be, and putting those into your calendar, because otherwise it all kind of blends together. So I think that just having things that are more scheduled, more like creating it more like a workplace, I think is a good thing. We also, we'd be sitting next to each other and we're still on Slack, because we need to have documented kinds of things. And obviously we work with engineers and everything else, but you're having tools also that help you with your communication, so that it's not just, remember, I told you that, you're sitting right here, I told you that. So those kinds of things don't happen.
Yes, all those little habits makes a big difference, especially when you have a team. How big is your team now, like with the different companies? How many people do you have?
We have, between the two companies, we have about 20 employees. We have it's engineering heavy, because a lot of our stuff is software design. Yes. But in both we have, the nice thing about our companies is that we can share resources. So, again, you have to decide when you're building your own companies, like where, how is it that you're able to do that best? We were able to, because the other company was already established, move some resources over to Badgecert to build it, and then move them back when we don't need them anymore. So that's been really successful for us. But again, it's at this point, it's okay, where do we, what kind of marketing support do we need? What kind of sales support do we need? And we're, both are small companies. So we decided to maintain that size because it's healthy for us. It puts food on the table. And I think it just really depends on, again, what the dream is for the larger business. Is it something that you do want to get money for, and you do want to, have something that you're building, up like crazy, or is it something you want to keep it more manageable and then, have your own autonomy with decisions and ways that you're spending money? So, and again, it's a very deliberate decision.
That's such a great tip, because I always tell entrepreneurs, bigger is not always better, because better is better. Don't get kind of seduced into, I want to have X amount of people, I want to have X amount of revenue. You may or may not be happier, and you may not get more fulfillment out of that.
And it may be the same in the end. Your revenue can go up, and then your profits go down. So I think that it is wonderful advice, and I absolutely agree with you. And it's something that you have to, as an entrepreneur, you're also doing that because you believe in yourself. And as my husband always said, we invest in ourselves. If we get money, we invest it back into, because we believe in ourselves. We believe in the things that we're capable of doing. And it's a different mindset than somebody who works at a company.
Yes.
When you do that, again, it is scary, but at the end of the day, I know, exactly what needs to get done. And if I don't do it, it suffers in the whole thing. And I think that there's something very, exhilarating about relying on yourself and knowing that you can, the buck stops here, and having that as a capability. And again, it isn't for everyone. A lot of people like to go to work, get their paycheck, at the end of the day, that's it.
Very good.
We need those people. Otherwise I can't run my company.
It's very good.
But it's definitely not for the faint of heart, as they say. Yeah.
Yes. And don't think that, I'm going to start something and it's going to be great and we're going to turn a profit in 6 months. Chances are it's not going to happen. You probably won't even turn a profit in a year or two. That's if you're good.
Yeah. If you're excellent.
Yeah. That's exactly 2-3 years. Maybe take longer than that, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, when my husband started his company, I was teaching still. So we relied on my salary. And I think that when you were talking about Jenny as well, it's that give and take also. So as a family, you have to decide, one person's going to be working. I mean, his hours were insane at the beginning. So we had to find that balance. And I think that that's also something that you have to agree on with your partner, because that also it's very difficult, especially if you're raising a family or, trying to do anything that is outside of that company. It definitely takes a partnership for that.
It reminds me that I was talking with an entrepreneur and he was just talking about, Dan, I'm a startup guy. That's what I do. So he grew his company from like 0 employee to 100 employees. He said, I was the happiest when I had like 4 or 5 people. When it's get to 100 people, he's like, he goes to work, he is just miserable. He said, I don't like it. I don't find it. I'm creative. It's draining for him. So finally, what he did is actually brought in a CEO, and then that was it. So he brought in a CEO running a mature business. He goes ahead and start another business.
Of course.
Because he said, this is me. I don't like that. I don't want to do that. I like to be creative in the trenches, rolled up the sleeves, not managing a big team. Then that's great. He's happy. Right?
A person after my own heart. Yeah. I love talking to people. I love learning about their stories. If I didn't have this, if I wasn't in the middle of it all, I don't think I'd be able to have all the conversations. I'd have to manage all the other kinds of things. But I like being in the trenches as well. And I think you have to know what you're good at and know what you like, and then provide the structure around it so that you're able to, if you're taking all this risk and everything, you want to get the reward, and the happiness to me is part of that reward.
Where do you see, what's your vision for Badgecert in the next, say 3 years?
I would say some of the things that we're doing right now is looking to other technologies. So blockchain is something that we're investing a lot in right now.
Yes.
And looking at that, we have some partnerships, large partnerships, which is another thing that, you'd be surprised, you have these gigantic companies, but you get in with the right person there and they really do foster you. They like helping smaller companies through. So we have some partnerships with some very large companies that have kind of helped us to conceive, okay, what could be next? So blockchain is one of the things that we're looking at. We're looking at
how does blockchain change what you do now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now, as I mentioned before, we become that validator. We become that authentic, the place where we're authenticating the earner and the issuer is what we call them.
Yes.
So we're that process in the middle. Blockchain takes that kind of another step further and provides another opportunity to decentralize some of that information, as well as provide a way to separate personally identifiable information from the actual credential. And that to me is what's fascinating. And that's to me what I see is like credentialing, 3.0 or whatever we want to call the next version of this. Is how do we look at what that type of technology can do to say, okay, here I am as a professional, but you don't need to know a lot of these other things about me, but here I am. These are the things you do need to know about me. So that's something that I think is very fascinating, is looking in that kind of realm of what's possible, utilizing that tool or that technology as a means to do so. So it's a very fledgling kind of thing. Blockchain has been talked about, in cryptocurrency and all these other kinds of things. And again, I'm in a place right now where it's like, okay, do I want to? I'll have to then preach to the world here. This is why it's good. This is what you need, and that will take, I say, 5 or 10 even years for blockchain technology to sort of meet where, readers and all the other kinds of things that'll necessitate that. But that's what we've been focusing on from a investigative standpoint and from a learning standpoint. So I'm very excited about that. And we're also looking at other opportunities to provide credentialing for skills and competencies, and looking at it a little bit about what I was talking about before, is what are the alternative types of educational programs that are out there that can use digital credentialing as a means to help somebody represent themselves in the world. So how do we take out some of the things that a four-year university degree will do for you and say, okay, I've pieced together, a story of my learning, of my experiences, of my knowledge set, to present to be able to start any kind of position. So how can we use badges as a means to provide somebody with that kind of digital resume by authenticated types of experiences?
Yes, and more so, what are the chances of us actually showing our certificate or diploma to someone? It
won't happen. And not only showing it, but nobody knows what it means.
Yes.
So having a piece of paper that says you graduated from
whatever,
from whatever, you took a class here or there, that means nothing to the end person. However, with a badge, you can see all the metadata there. It can be tagged with the competencies. One of the things that I've had some of our training providers do is they actually put a little blurb, a 20-second video on YouTube. We link to it within the metadata. So somebody who's looking at the badge can click on that, and let's say, Dan Lok has his course. I click on that, and it's just a little blurb by you saying, yep, this is what this course was about. The person who graduated here, thank you for whatever. It gives Dan Lok an opportunity then to market your classes, and it gives the individual an opportunity to say, this is what I learned, and that was the class.
That makes sense. I could also see, I don't know, just an idea where if for the individual profile, maybe even kind of like, not like LinkedIn, but some of their history or some of the other accomplishment that within that they've also won certain awards, they are honorable students or whatever it might be, right? It also could be showcased.
That if they were on a board, it was a voluntary board, or they are volunteering at, a nonprofit, something like that. Those are experiences, as you know, that really add into who somebody is and what they're capable of doing. So just because it wasn't learned at a university, an English class at, wherever university, here you have a story to tell that may or may not be something that is, university-based or degree-based, but yet it is equally, if not more, important to you representing the kinds of skills and competencies that you can provide for, an employer.
It's fascinating because one of the concepts I teach, it's called social capital. I teach that people, it's not just social media following, but when you have following and fans on social media, it's actually a form of capital because it is influence. Now, in this case, I could almost see this being a social currency because it is a form of social currency.
That's exactly what we call it.
It is a currency because it's trust, it's credibility, it's a way for anyone to identify, to know, okay, how trustworthy this person, what they have done, right? Is it actually what they have done? And then they could see that. And not just, because I find now, even myself, because I'm so heavily on social media, there's a lot of noise on social media too, right? And anyone has an opinion, everyone can post something. It's like, if as a professional, I kind of want the marketplace focus on this, forget all this noise and stuff, right? Because social media is designed to distract us.
That's right.
It's what's designed to do, right?
Yeah. But I also find that even like LinkedIn, it's self-reported.
Yes.
So I could say whatever on a resume. I can say whatever I want. Badges by nature take that out of the equation, and they say, here, this is reliable, this is verified, this person actually did these things, and this is what, and they can tell their own story. Then they can say, here's 6 badges that will help tell the story of why it is that I'm the best candidate for this position or whatever it may be. And I can say, here's 6 for you, and here's another 10 for you, and here's 3 for you, because I can then tell the story how I want to tell it based on the accomplishments that I have achieved. Yeah.
Awesome. Dr. Ginger, if you have one last question, if you have the opportunity to go back in time, go back to when you were just about to start the business, right? What would you say to your younger self? What advice would you have for yourself?
I'd say be patient, stay the course, and even though that fear drives you, it's going to be okay. You'll always land on your feet somehow. You're smart. You're good. You can do this. I'd be the biggest cheerleader possible, because it gets real scary. It gets confusing. You realize that there's things you don't know, but you know, if you're diligent and you stay the course, you'll find a new path, and you don't know what that path is going to be. Business takes on its own path a lot of the time, and you just have to sit there for the ride.
Yeah, for all my fans and listeners, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
And if not, you hope you fail fast and then start a new track.
And then
it's
yes.
okay. You got to find your detour.
And it's okay to pivot. Don't get attached.
The best thing to do is
it's okay to pivot.
I think that if you don't pivot, you've done something wrong. If you haven't done justice to your company if you haven't done a little bit of pivoting, because then you're just you're blindsided by too many things. Yeah.
Awesome. And if for our listeners, if they want to find out more about what you do, of course, they go to Badgecert.com. What's the best way to connect and find out more about your company?
I'd say certainly go to our website. You can find me on LinkedIn also, and link me in, and then we can certainly start a conversation that way. And we're also doing a lot more podcasting and other types of presentations on our website. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. Nice.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Dan.
It's been awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Dan Lok. We're looking to invest $10 million in 100 tech startups in the next 3 years. You could be one of them. If you are a founder of a tech startup, if you are looking for financial capital, guidance, and mentorship, go to www.danlokventures.com to see if you qualify.